In here. Hey everyone, Josh with Royal Treatment here. Today I'm going to tie a GT fly for an upcoming trip to Christmas Island. And it's a little more labor intensive fly than I really like to tie, but I thought it would be interesting and you guys might like to see this. This fly is going to be pretty big, 5 to 7 inches long. I don't know if you can see, I put this tape on my vise, so when I have my hook SL12S 6/0 in here, this kind of first mark is around 5 inches from the eye, 6 inches to the end, and kind of helps me get a gauge on how big my fly is going to be. So this is a pretty big fly. It's a kind of GT brush fly. So Gamakatsu SL12S. It's going to be one of the best platforms to tie this on. This is a big fly, so I'm going to use big thread, Danville flat wax 210. And so I'm going to start by just laying down a base of thread. And I really want to make this fly extremely tough. So I'm going to use a lot of super glue, UV resin, and a lot of thread to make this fly just super, super tough. So that thread is going to go about to the hook point like that. And some of these materials I've prepped a little bit ahead of time, but I'm going to start with a base of purple SLF dubbing, or SLF flash blend, excuse me. And so I cut a hank about 6 inches long. And so once I have that cut, I'm going to actually just grab the ends of it and pull on either side and kind of give it a natural taper. So even though I cut about 6 inches, it's going to be a little bit longer. Something like, yeah, maybe like that. And I roll it in between my fingers to kind of even that whole thing out. Now you can see it has that really nice taper to it. So when I tie this in, the bottom half, I'm going to tie it folded in half. The bottom half is going to be a little bit shorter, and so maybe that's 5 inches, so maybe around 4 inches for that bottom side, something like that. And I'm going to tie it in, lifting it up so it stays right on top of that shank. Now, as I fold in the second half, I'm going to take it, I'm going to fold it back, and I'm kind of going to measure it to see where it's going to land. If I feel like it's too long, I'll just tie it down a little bit further on the shank, and that'll help to shorten it up pretty easy. Once I have that, I'll remeasure. So maybe somewhere in there. I'm feeling pretty good about that. And hopefully my feathers will be a little bit longer. Actually, let's shorten it up even more. The other thing, obviously I could have tied it on so it went just a little bit further on that bottom leg. So just wrapping, again, I'm holding it right up on top. Nice solid base of thread there. There we go. And as I tie this, I'm hoping I don't have to trim that tail down, but that looks pretty good. Second thing I'm going to do is kind of the second half of that wing. So most bait fish, dark on top, lighter color on the bottom. So we're going to do a black overwing. And I tie this in reverse style, kind of the same way I would do with Atlantic salmon flies and that kind of stuff. So we'll reverse tie it so it's facing forward and then fold it back. So get a pretty good hank of craft fur. And sometimes I'll just take a comb, just kind of rake it out of there. And if I have too much, I can easily just pull some out to thin it down. Yeah, something like that. And so you can see it's going to be just about as long. It's going to have a nice taper to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to turn this around. Advance my thread just a wrap. And you reverse tie it in. So just like this. And you kind of have it on your side, a little on my side, so towards you a little bit. And then it's going to roll. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to help position it. And I don't want it to cover the whole thing, it's just an on top deal. And so make sure it's locked in. And this one I'm going to take and hold on to it. There you go, you can see it's standing up pretty good. Yeah, something like that. So that is the tail, or about 50% of it. Get a little zap-a-gap, and what I'm going to do is just glue this whole thing together. This thing is just going to become one here. Next, I'm going to grab a little bit of the thin lateral scale. Now what I like to do is maybe grab 3 strands total, cut them long, and I'm going to just wrap them around the thread, measure them so I know that they are about the same length, and just lock them down with a thread. Once I have a little bit of tension on there, now I'll just split them. And these don't necessarily need to be down the side, but a little, a little bit high all the way down the length of the fly. So something like that. This thing takes shape pretty quick. I grabbed a couple of strung Chinese saddle hackles. You can see they kind of are a little wonky there, which is fine. And measured them out so they're about the same size, same thickness, width, all that good stuff. And when we tie this on, we want it to be just a little bit longer, and we don't mind leaving that little bit of fluff there. And just lock it down right on top. And so the feather is tinted a little bit on the top angle. Measure this second one. There we go. Looks pretty good. And we want that fluff to be there. It gives a little support. Adds a little bit of body to the fly. And I don't normally tie with big scissors, but you can see I have a pretty big set for this kind of fly. A lot of big synthetic materials, lots of big materials. Looks nice, I think. Okay, so now I'm going to do a little kind of body of fox hair. So this is purple Arctic fox, and I kind of picked some. It's maybe about 2 inches long. And what I'm going to do is kind of tie it in the round. So cut that, grab my comb, and just start kind of combing this out. Get that real short under fur that just adds a lot of bulk without any real benefit. I got Velcro on this backside. And just get us nice and thinned out. And what this is going to do when we tie this in, it's going to add kind of a layer of depth in here. So we're going to tie it in. It's going to be almost all the way around the body, more on top than on the bottom. And it's going to be a longer material, so it's going to be more of a layer in there. And we want it to be maybe 1.5 inches, 2 inches out the back. And we want it to be long enough that it's not covered by the brush that we're going to tie in. So a couple loose wraps, don't pull them tight. And then I'm going to make sure this is wrapped around. And if it goes all the way around, doesn't matter. But you can see it's missing the bottom just a little. Yeah, something like that. And I probably won't cut all that tip end of this material. So it's going to give me a little more foundation. I'll trim these little butts right here at the very end. You can see if you have the materials together, this fly goes together pretty fast. That looks great. Now I'm going to give this actually a lateral line. That's going to be just a standard size of lateral scale. And what I do, kind of the same way before, I cut one long piece, I double it over, make sure the tips are even, and then I'm going to slide it down the thread, lock it into place, give some wraps, separate these. Now I'll have one on each side, pull them down into place, and then just line them up and just pull them right where I want them. You can see now they're just flat down the body. Looks pretty good. Now you have that lateral line. Okay, a little bit more zap a gap. Like I said, we want this thing to just be glued together and be one. It's okay if you're a little liberal with it. Get some thread wraps over the top of that. Okay. Now I have a craft fur brush. This thing is maybe 2.5 inches. And I'm gonna just tie a little bit of the tip in. And when I start wrapping this thing, I want to not have it edge to edge, giving it a lot of bulk. So I want to kind of almost loose wrap, so spaced forward, so more palmered up. And as I do that, if they're getting trapped, I can just kind of pick one out, a couple fibers, make sure they're free. Like so. There we go. And then at the head, I don't mind it being a little bit more bulky. And I'll do maybe 2 or 3 edge to edge. So maybe I have 5 wraps total, something like that. You can see this fly is coming together pretty good now. So get that into place where I want it. Lock it down right on top. Maybe 5 or 6 thread wraps to secure it. And I have some nice cutters that I use to cut this wire. Do not use your good scissors for this. Once I get that cut, lay down a good base of thread for the head. And then whip finish. And if it is a little too fuzzy up there, I will take a lighter and just burn these little ends down. Yeah, like that. Now I'm going to just hit this with a little bit of UV resin. This is Solar Res Bone Dry. This makes a great head. It's super thin, penetrates well, and just dries super shiny and hard. So something like that. and just hit it with the torch and should be good to go. Okay, so once you brush this thing out, you could just have it like that and it would be a pretty good fly. I like to put eyes on them. I think it adds that little bit of lifelike to it. Yeah, but you can see this thing has a really good look just the way it is. Okay, so I'll add some eyes real quick. I'm gonna do a 10mm Flyman living eye. That's the silver one. Looks good. This part is a little bit messy. This is a little epoxy that I use. I use this, whatever, E6000. Stuff works great. My tube is a little bit grenaded, but that's fine. There's that. Yeah, the cap, the bottom of this thing split open. So I haven't even been bothering using the cap on the front. And everyone has their own way that they like to do these resin, the resin for these eyes. What I've been doing is taking a fair amount and kind of stabbing it through. Now I know it's kind of exactly where I want it to be. A little bit more on either side here. And you have to be so careful with this stuff. It just gets everywhere. There we go. Okay, stick my eye right on my other bodkin. So I just have 2 of them ready to go. And I like them to be up a little bit so they're not too far down the blocking out that hook shank, the gap here. Look at them both, make sure you got them pretty well measured out. And what I'll do a lot of times is come back after with a UV resin to make sure that I fill in the gaps a little bit and they're stuck exactly where I want them. But I think with this eye, it would stay on pretty good for now. It would definitely be fishable. And I tie this thing, this is obviously black and purple. I do all black, red, red and white, red and yellow, tan, kind of mullet color, or maybe baby bonefish color. Yeah, this is a great fly, just a kind of a GT brush fly. You know, like I said, I have this mark here, 5-inch, 6-inch, so 5.5 inches. Good size, still castable, and still has a big bulky profile, and is not too out of control. I hope you guys find a place to use this and it works for you. Thanks.